Hello, it is me. It is Q, tarot practitioner, astrologer, fiber artist, studier of psychology and sociology, though I am not a therapist or a sociologist, even though I did go to school for both. I am here to talk to you today a little more in depth than I did last time about this Aquarius full moon. So it is exact on the 29th of July at 7:35 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So like translate that to your time zone. By the time I upload this, it will have already been exact where I live in Pacific Standard Time Zone. It probably actually everywhere. That's how time works. I forgot how time works for a second. Bear with me because I'm using the back-facing camera right now, and I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be looking. So like, there's three cameras. I don't understand why there's so many lenses. Anyway, not the point. Okay. I want to talk to you about it a little bit more in depth. I did a tarot reading the other day, while also wearing this leather thing. And I'm still working on writing the pattern for this piece. By the way, it's almost done. It's really simple. Like I said, there's just some like notes that I'm adding to the pattern to make it a little easier for you if you've never worked with sequin yarn before, because it's a little tricky. And so I want people to be able to try it and not get held up by certain things that are like pitfalls of this type of yarn and be like, oh, it's a me problem, when it's like, it's just this yarn and there are fixes for it. Anyway, so Aquarius full moon. A million things for me to talk about today. So I'm looking down at my notes here and they're I'll show you very briefly because they're a little chaotic. So we don't want to look at it too hard, but when I do these more in-depth readings, what I do is I pull tarot cards for the parts of the chart that I personally feel are the most, not even just personally feel, like based on the data in front of me, are the most lit up by the new moon, or in this case, the full moon. And when I say most lit up, what I mean is that like the sun and the moon are making aspects to certain things during the full moon. Whatever it's making aspects to, that's what's the most lit up. That's what's the most relevant for this lunation. And I pay attention to the sun and the moon. I don't only pay attention to the moon because any lunation, whether it be a new moon or a full moon or a balsamic moon or a last quarter moon or a first quarter moon, whatever moon phase we're talking about the relationship between the sun and the moon. We're not just talking about the moon. So while, it's called an Aquarius full moon, it's a full moon because the moon is directly opposite the sun in the zodiacal wheel. That's always what's happening. So there's a relationship to the sun that's important as well. We got to balance these two together. Okay, so that being said, I pull cards for parts of the chart that I think are the most activated at the time of the lunation. And so what I encourage people to do is to focus on the parts of you can focus on all parts of the reading, but you want to look at where these things fall in your own natal chart. So that requires like pulling up your chart and seeing what houses all of these signs fall in your chart, because I'll be pulling cards and talking about stuff that's happening in Aquarius, obviously, also in Leo, in Gemini, in Aries, and in Taurus. And we all have all 12 signs in our chart. We might not have placements in every sign, but that doesn't matter. Like it matters, but it doesn't mean you don't have those signs in your chart. Like they're in everyone's chart because the whole sky exists and it existed when you were born. People like to argue this point, and I'm like, I understand what they're trying to say, but they're like not understanding something very important about astrology when they say it, right? That you want to pay attention to what is transiting what parts of your chart. So for example, let's say I pull up my own chart. I'm a Gemini rising. And so I will be pulling cards related to the zodiac sign Gemini and what's happening in Gemini right now. And so for me, Gemini rules my first house. So I would pay attention to how that might relate to first house themes. For example, the first house has to do with like our body and our sense of self and our personality, stuff like that. And so anything that I talk about in Gemini would be related to those things for me. Somebody else might have Gemini as their fourth house. And the fourth house often has to do with like ancestral baggage and like our family and our home. Sometimes our father, right? So I would pay attention to the things I say about Gemini in relationship to those themes. And if you want to understand it, just like a basic list of what the house themes are, I strongly recommend Googling the astrology podcast house meanings graphic. Type that into Google, and I just really like that specific graphic. It's got a really nice little list of house meanings for every single one of the 12 houses. If you already know, that's perfect, but that's a good thing to Google if you don't. Okay. I think that is actually, that's enough preamble. That's enough preamble. So today I am using the tarot deck. It's called the Dream Vision Tarot. I bought this one secondhand. It's just such a super cool deck. And so I am asking for my most benevolent and beneficent ancestors and spirits working on my side in favor of the highest good of myself and the collective of folks who will be receiving this reading today to come forth and give us some messages. So we're going to start by focusing on the Leo Aquarius axis. So obviously it's a full moon in Aquarius. We have the moon conjunct Pluto and the asteroid goddess Juno in Aquarius. And Pluto has so much to do with death and rebirth, and the meaning that I have been rolling with for Juno lately is to do with like our commitments and agreements, and like contracts, be they literal or, kind of figurative. These are the kind of things that come to the fore in with Juno present over here in Aquarius. When we look over to the sun on the opposite side of the chart in Leo, we've got the sun conjoined with Jupiter. And it's also worth noting that the North Node recently moved into Aquarius and the South Node recently moved into Leo. Throwing those things out there as well. And so this card that I'm pulling is it's this conversation about the tension between it's not even a tension. It's like, what do we have to let go of in order to grow? I think that a lot of people learned pretty quickly after we had this Jupiter transit through Cancer the last year or so, that just because Jupiter is in a sign that it likes to be in, like Cancer, it's exalted in Cancer, it doesn't mean that everything will be butterflies and rainbows and sugar and unicorns. There's work associated with Jupiter. Because Jupiter, yes, is a planet that has to do with our luck in life. But a definition of luck that I'm often working with is that people who are lucky are prepared often. They're prepared to take advantage of an opportunity that comes to them at the right place at the right time. They may not have known that opportunity was going to appear. But what is lucky about the opportunity appearing is that not only did it appear, but they had a mindset and they were thinking about it in such a way that allowed them to even see that the opportunity was there. And then they had the tools necessary, the skills necessary in order to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. All of the elements have to be there for luck to exist. And I'm saying all this to say that, Jupiter asks us to do work. Jupiter also rules our ability to grow and expand beyond our personal limitations. That's not easy work. That's not easy work. That requires effort. It's literally work. And I'm just saying all of this to say we have this tension, right? We've got Pluto, this god of the underworld and of death and rebirth, in this opposition with the sun and Jupiter in particular, the god of growth and expansion, right? And it's this key turning point where we get an opportunity to see what must die in order for us to grow. And what direction are we growing into? We're growing in the direction of community. I talked about this in the last reading. We're growing in the direction of community. We're assembling our dream team. I talked about this already, but we want to go a little deeper today. I see the North Node in Aquarius now, and we're going to have eclipses coming up soon in August. But the North Node, the eclipses and the nodes have to do with each other. The North Node is in Aquarius. The South Node is in Leo. And the way that I like to think about the nodes, many people will talk about the South Node being your past life and the North Node being something that you're moving toward. And that's a valid interpretation of the nodes. I've seen it work in my own life in interpreting my own chart and interpreting other people's charts. Another interpretation that I like to work with is thinking of the South Node as a place of decrease where we are kind of cutting back and letting things go. Essentially kind of moving away from it also, to go with that previous definition. And the North Node is somewhere where expansion is happening, where almost abundance abundance sometimes to our detriment can happen. And so this is like this interesting opportunity with everything in Leo right now, communicating like, hey, less of this, less me, less like, showing off for the sake of showing off, less sharing for the sake of boosting your own ego, and more like sharing in support of the collective, sharing, in a way that supports your neighbor, right? It's what I was saying before about like, what skills do you have? In the last reading, I was like, what skills do you have? Like, what do you have in abundance that you're overlooking that you can offer to community, to other people? Okay. I'm pulling a card just to go a little deeper on that theme. It's super funny because I really barely looked at the chart last time I did that other reading. And I love that I didn't really even need to look at the chart that hard to just talk about the themes. Everything's always connected. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and pull a card. Okay, card number 1. Is this the... Bear with me because I don't work with this deck that often. It looks like it is the 7 of Pentacles. Yeah. Sometimes it's called the 7 of Orbs, so I get what they're going for here. So that is the 7 of Pentacles. Talk about frustration. Talk about frustration. And this is kind of doubling back on what I was talking about just now about like opportunities that arise. Like in the 7 of Pentacles, we have planted the seeds. We've tilled the soil. We have laid down fertilizer. We have watered the ground over and over again. We have killed the pests. We have tended the soil. We have added the fertilizer. We have watered the ground. We have built shelter, to keep the elements from destroying our crop. And the 7 of Pentacles is a moment right before everything is in bloom. It's that moment of tension of like, is it going to work? Is it growing? Like, is the thing I want coming to fruition? It's that moment before where like, you've taken all the steps, or you've taken whatever steps you've taken, but you're not sure yet if it's actually going to come to fruition. You're not sure yet if it will fruit. Sometimes it's those moments where maybe we have done the work, but sometimes no matter how much work we do on something, no matter how much we work to gain skill, if we're in some sort of competition with another person, we still may be bested. There's a little bit of disappointment inherent here. I want to clarify that. Ooh. A little bit of disappointment. A little bit of disappointment. A little bit of tension. Okay. Yeah. The 4 of Swords. It's a card that's all about rest. And in particular, when we hit the 4 of Swords, it's the kind of rest that you do after like a long, difficult battle. You know what the message is that's coming forward in my mind right now is a watched pot never boils. And like, if you watch it for long enough, it'll boil eventually. I love technically picking apart a metaphor, but a watched pot doesn't boil, which is to say that like if you're sitting after you've done all this planting and you've done all these steps and you're staring at your tomato plant and you're just waiting for a tomato to grow, it's not going to happen while you're sitting there staring at it. Go do something else. And the something else you might need to do is lay down and rest. Q, how does this relate to this tension between me, myself, and I? Me. I'm the center of everything. Ego. And collective unity and building community and pouring into those communities and becoming a good neighbor. How are these things related? This reading is really for the kind of person who is like a hermit, like myself, who is like not really in the habit of like being in community with other people, who would much rather be left alone. Is the kind of person who's starting to realize right now that like you've done enough hermiting, you've learned everything you can being the hermit, and you actually have to go out and share. You have to go out and share. But we want to be mindful here. There's 2 things at play. So in the 7 of Pentacles, we need to understand that you have to keep showing up over and over and over again over time, right? It is like I was saying with the Seven of Pentacles, like you got to plant the seeds, you got to water them, you got to add fertilizer, you got to shelter them, you got to kill the bud, you got to water them again, you got to add more fertilizer. You have to do all of these things, you have to keep doing them. You have to continue to tend it, or else it will die. That's just how plants work. And that is also how relationships work. You don't just get to say hi to your neighbor one time and then, like, that's it. You actually have to keep doing things. Yes, it's tedious. That's why we have the Four of Swords here. Like, rest. Don't overexert yourself. Don't push yourself beyond your own limitations and constraints, right? Learn what your limitations and constraints are, because if you're a hermity person like me, I know that you're really energetically sensitive. I know that you're the kind of person who can't spend a ton of time, around other people. There are certain kinds of gatherings you're not going to be able to go to, or you'll be able to go, but there are certain limitations and constraints to how you're able to show up in those places. Honor those limitations and continue showing up. It's not an excuse anymore. Jupiter and Pluto, these are heavy hitters, babe. Jupiter and Pluto, Leo and Aquarius, these are like big, like beneath the surface, like subconscious energies. These are the kind of energies that when you contend with them and when you listen to the wisdom that they're giving to you, you will grow. You will become different. You will become unrecognizable in positive ways, but only if you do what you're supposed to, only if you do what you're told. And right now, what you're being told to do is know thyself, but push thyself, okay? That's the line. That's it. That's the message. That's what's going on in the Leo and Aquarius parts of our charts. And apply it however you want to your chart. Apply it however you want to your life. If it resonates, keep it. Take what resonates. If it doesn't resonate, leave it. It's for someone else, right? This is a collective reading. It's for a lot of people. There's a little something for everybody here. Okay, we're moving on. And I am now turning my focus to the Gemini part of the chart. The reason why we're looking at the Gemini part of the chart is because Uranus is in Gemini right now. And this lunation, it looks like the sun is making a sextile to Uranus and the moon is making a trine to Uranus. So that's a positive aspect. I love to see that. Like moving on from the tension of this opposition between Jupiter and Pluto and Juno and the sun and the moon. A little trine, a little bit of a positive aspect coming in from Uranus and Gemini. Uranus newly in Gemini. We're getting to learn a little bit more about what this Uranus and Gemini transit means for all of us. Let me say Uranus and Gemini one more time. Okay. Pulling a card. Okay. Cute. Two of Pentacles. It's Two of Pentacles. We're juggling. We're juggling. What are we juggling? Hold on. And I mean, I think it's kind of clear what it's pointing at to me, but I like to pull two cards. Ooh, not me dropping half the deck. And the Knight of Swords. Okay, so focusing on the Two of Pentacles first, what are we juggling? Again, everything is always going to point back towards the sun and the moon here. And in the sun and the moon, obviously, we're like juggling this tension between me, and community. That's it. Juggling, priorities. That, part of the balancing of Leo and Aquarius is like understanding where you have either been over prioritizing other people to the detriment of yourself, or over prioritizing yourself to the detriment of your relationships, to the detriment of your like beliefs and ideals. Because our beliefs are so wrapped up in Jupiter stuff, over prioritizing your beliefs and ideals over, just like going out and like being able to be with people. What have you called a limitation that's like not actually a limitation? Like you just don't want to do it. Whereas like the excuse that doesn't actually have any backing, like that's the Two of Pentacles conversation. Because like change is necessary. What deck is that? Do I have it out? I don't have it out. I'm in the middle of moving, and so I've packed up the majority of my deck collection, but I've kept some of my favorites out. I'm looking for my Thoth Tarot right now. I'm pretty confident that the keyword on the Two of Pentacles in the Thoth Tarot is change. Hold on. Thoth Tarot, Two of Pentacles. Images. Yeah, I'm right. I don't know how well you can see that on my phone screen, but it's the keyword is down here at the bottom. It's change. And so, There's that Octavia Butler quote from Parable of the Sower, where it's longer than what I'm about to say, but the main part of it is that like change is God, which is to say that like God is inevitable, and so is change. Like change is inevitable in the way that like death is inevitable, and what is death but like a change of form? We cannot escape change. And change is sometimes scary because it does mean that we will have to like let go of certain things to move on to new ones. It's kind of hilarious that I pulled a card whose keyword is change for Uranus in Gemini, because like Uranus is the change maker, the primary change maker. Uranus is a revolutionary. I think about, the mythology around Uranus, and Moana is in theaters right now, the live action one. I'm probably not gonna go see it. I just don't have time, and I'm not very excited about it. I really like the original, so I'm like afraid to ruin it. But I think about the mythology of Maui in Moana, and that he is this god, and I'm not sure how, like, I haven't done research on like the legitimacy of the story that they present in the Disney film. Like they may have like taken liberties with the storyline, but I'm just rolling with what I know from that movie and that movie only. That he is this god who is like given things to humanity be- because he was like almost like Hercules in the sense that he's part human and like part god. And so he gives these things to humanity. He shows up for humanity. I think, if I'm remembering properly, I think he gives humanity like the coconut or something. Um, I might be wrong. It doesn't really matter that much. Uranus or Uranus, I don't know how to say it, in Greek mythology gave humanity fire against the wishes of the gods. And so there is that edge with Uranus where it's a bit revolutionary, and the change that happens is quite contested. And we always think that we're the revolutionary. Everybody who goes to see Wicked thinks that they're Elphaba. Everybody can't be Elphaba. Some of us are Glinda. Some of us are Glinda. Most of us are both. It's just, that's the reality of the situation. And I think many of us are reticent to recognize the parts of ourselves that are not wanting to change. But when we don't recognize those parts of ourselves, we don't change, and we blame it on external factors when really it's like an us problem. Focus on yourself. I'm looking at the Knight of Swords here. Anytime I see a swords card, it's like step one, discernment. Step two, cutting away that which is in the way, that which is holding you back, that which is anchoring you to the past in a negative way, because there's positive ways to be anchored to the past, but there's also negative ways to be anchored to the past. The Knight of Swords in particular is fast. The knights are fast moving. They're the fastest moving in the court cards. And often I think of them as like energies or parts of ourselves, but for some reason today I'm wanting to interpret the Knight of Swords as like a person in your life, who is very quick, who you kind of admire. Somebody who is like much more affable than you. And you're like, how the fuck do you do that? Excuse my language, but like, how do you do that? Like, how do you just like go out there and socialize? How are you spending like all your time around people? Like, I don't understand you. That person, study them, please. Study them. And you don't need to become them, because you're not them, because like you're not somebody who can be around people all the time like that really sociable friend that you have can. But you can learn bits and pieces from them, and you can employ them in your own way. You can employ them in self-honoring ways. Moving on. Aries. Aries part of the chart. The reason why I'm talking about this is, again, it's a nice, cute little supportive aspect. Trine the sun is Neptune, and sextile the moon. Neptune is trine the sun and sextile the moon. Neptune is in Aries right now. It's worth noting that we also have Saturn and Pallas Athena and Vesta in Aries, but I'm not really going to talk about them very much because I do not want this to be a 17-hour video. So we're locking in on Neptune, and we want to hear a little bit from Neptune and its role in this lunation right now. But what I'll tell you off dome, Neptune is the great dissolver of boundaries. Neptune, 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 Neptune. People say that Neptune rules Pisces, and I disagree with them because I studied under traditional astrologers, so I use traditional rulerships because that schema was made a very long time ago based on those seven planets. And it's like the symmetry of it is actually so beautiful when you go back to the roots of it. I'm working on a workbook right now that kind of talks about that. It's not done yet. I'm working on lots of things. When it's ready, you'll see it and you'll get to learn about these things if you haven't already. Um, but I don't know if I think that Neptune has an affinity for Aquarius personally, in the sense that Neptune is a little bit more community oriented, is a little bit more empathy oriented. And I think that people like to say that Aquarius is kind of cold hearted and distant, but they love community. They're so supportive of community. And I think that there's a fierce heartfulness in that. I do not believe that they're cold hearted people. Okay, so from Neptune, we have the Page of Pentacles, and I think that's so sweet. The words coming into my brain right now as I look at that card: get to your craft, whatever your craft is. And I don't mean arts and crafts, although if that's your thing, girl, do it. I know that's my thing. It's get to your craft, like get your hands dirty. Anytime I see the Page of Pentacles, we're getting our hands in the dirt. We're getting our hands in the dirt. And the dirt, not literally the dirt, but like that might be it. You might need to start a community garden. But it's getting your hands dirty, getting into your work. Hold on, one more from Neptune. Because, and I want you to remember and keep in mind that like these trines and sextiles from Uranus and Neptune, it means these energies are a little more peaceful, a little more easeful, and things that you can kind of lean into to help with the more difficult parts of the chart. So like the growth and transformation and like underworld traversing you're going to have to do, that's the hard part. What's going to help you do that is like change might be a little bit easier for you right now because it's a trine from Uranus. With Neptune, like it might be a little bit more easy to have empathy for others. Because of this trine from Neptune. Okay, I'm gonna pull a second card for Neptune. That's okay, whatever. I pulled the Tower. I have a nervous reaction every single time I pull this card. Okay, so we have the Tower. Hold on, I'm like knocking everything over. We have the Tower and the Page of Pentacles. Yeah, that's aggressive, but I think it's necessary because we are talking about Aries, and this is a card that's associated with Mars, the ruler of Aries. We have Mars over in Gemini right now. I think I pulled this card because it's telling me not to ignore Mars because I decided not to talk about it, and I guess that I have to. Mars said no. You're gonna have to talk about me today. So here's the thing about the Tower Tarot card. The kind of destruction that Mars brings about is often sort of Uranian in nature, in that we often like don't see it coming. It seems like it comes out of nowhere. Now, sometimes it does. Sometimes it's like natural disaster, literally. When we're talking about like mundane astrology, I'm not a mundane astrologer, so I'm not going to talk about that very much. But on a personal level, I have seen the way that tower moments often start with a single pebble, falling away from the tower wall, and then two pebbles, and then a larger little bit of rock, and then maybe a whole brick comes out, and then one wall gets shaky, and then that wall crumbles. And this is a metaphor for the way in which, like, sometimes our ego can distract us from the truth of something for so long that the only thing that will wake us up from the delusion is a really great word for Neptune, wake us up from the delusion of, that our ego has created to protect us, is like something really shocking, a really shocking moment. Wow, that's huge. This is supposed to be easy, but that's not easy energy. So we're integrating. I think I pulled this card, so it could be like my spirits are like, Q, it's not supposed to be. It's not gonna be that easy. It is Neptune. It is an outer planet. We have to understand that, like, so my personal bent on astrology and tarot is personal mostly. Like most of what I do is natal astrology because I started studying these things because I wanted to cultivate a connection with my own intuition and because I wanted to be able to understand my own chart without having to go to somebody else to tell me about it. Like I wanted to be the expert and the authority on what was going on in my chart and be able to use that to better navigate my life, right? So I'm always looking at these things in a really personal way, but I think this card that I'm pulling right now is forcing me to pay attention to the ways in which like we are kind of at the very, very beginning of a new world, a beginning that is so imperceptible that it is hard to even see. Um, it is affecting all of us. Like this is not a solo journey, like it's everyone all together. And I think that's why there's such an emphasis right now in the collective energy on behaving more like a collective. Especially with these eclipses coming, you know, this next eclipse cycle for the next couple of years in Leo and Aquarius, it really is going to be a time of reckoning for, um, you know, people who have overemphasized me, for billionaires, for people in the United States who live like in an individualistic society who have been able to skate by without giving a shit about their neighbors. Like it's actually you can't it never should have been this way, and it really can't be this way. I've seen so much content online recently talking about moving back to a more matriarchal like way of structuring society, and there are a lot of people who like don't understand what that means, and they think it's just like the opposite of patriarchy where it's women instead of men in positions of power. But matriarchy was never that. It was never giving that. We've only been doing patriarchy for like a very short part of human history. They don't teach that in the schools. Like most of human history, society has been organized in matriarchal ways. And in matriarchal societies, like there's an emphasis on taking care of each other and like supporting those who are like the most in need and not pushing people to the outskirts of society because they can't produce. There's this emphasis on like what's best for the collective is best for us all. There's like the de-emphasis on like the individual, and striving and appearing to be the best and showing off and being flashy and you know overt displays of wealth and hoarding things. And there's more abundance in matriarchal societies, and I think that's what the tower points at in a way. Like it's pointing at the steady crumble of the world that we have known and this opportunity we have now, Page of Pentacles, to envision something new. I talked about this last time. Of course it was going to be a theme here. Okay, I want to wrap this up. So last card for Taurus, the Taurus parts of our charts. The reason why we're talking Taurus today is because both the sun and the moon are making a square with Chiron, who has recently moved into Taurus. So we have to talk about that because Chiron is a pretty slow moving asteroid, but also incredibly important. A lot of people will describe Chiron as the wounded healer. And yeah, I think that's really valid, but I've been wanting to kind of trouble that interpretation lately. I think that the Chiron parts of our charts is like somewhere in the chart where we have been deeply hurt. It's a part of the chart where we have been invalidated over and over again. It's a part of the chart where we feel that we have to like make up for something or prove ourselves. And I think that learning the lesson of Chiron is to begin to understand that you never had anything to prove, that you were always valid in that particular way. And you get to, by virtue of healing that in yourself, it becomes such a like place of strength that by virtue of showing up, having learned that lesson and coming to understand it and healing through that, you come out on the other side and like, yeah, you're going to have a scar. But the tissue has healed. There's, you know, maybe some sort of remnant of what was, but anyway, as a result of it, you're tougher. You embody that lesson in a way that inspires others to move through the tension and the pain of that particular wound around you. Okay, a card or two for Chiron. Ooh, ooh. And this is a square, so there's a lot of tension here. A lot of tension in Taurus. A lot of tension in the Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius parts of our charts. Okay. Ooh, that's cute. I like that. The Queen of Cups. We'll do one more. Usually I'll do one card per, but I've been kind of having fun with pulling stuff in pairs. I usually try to keep the number of cards to a minimum, but look at me branching out. Look at me doing things different. Okay, change. And the 10 of Wands. Queen of Cups, 10 of Wands. Cute, cute. I really like these cards, especially after the last two that were kind of intense. Queen of Cups is such a sweet energy. Often I think of the queens as like this sanctuary of replenishment. For some reason, the words energetic hygiene are coming to the fore for me right now. And it might be because I have just done a lot of energetic hygiene before I sat down to do this reading. But I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, a trine from Neptune can be positive, but also it makes it like really easy to lose yourself. So it's pulling me back to that, to Neptune. Yeah, it's pulling me back to Neptune. Just because this is such a Neptune card. Like, look at it. That's big Neptune energy. Anyway. Queen of Cups, 10 of Wands. For Chiron. There's a responsibility here. Yeah. Like, who are you responsible for? Who are you responsible to? Who do you go to like share what you're going through? Where do you go to receive accountability for like what's going on in your life? Who can you vent to that always tells you the truth about the matter? Doesn't tell you what you want to hear. Because, like, I mean, it's good to have friends who will tell you what you want to hear. But, like, who's going to, like, tell you, like, the truth? Who's going to be like, I know you really well, and I know that you're struggling with this, and also, you're a little off base here. You were a little irresponsible with that one, and that's why that happened. It was a ramification of your actions. This is what's coming to the fore for this one. I don't know why. But that's it. The 10 of Wands is this energy of like, it's about responsibility, and it's also about like over responsibility. It's the kind of over responsibility that comes across as meddling a little bit. Like, it's hypervigilance. It's hypervigilance. It's like the bitterness that comes about when you have like done a bunch of things for someone and that person never asked you to do that stuff. They might not have even really wanted you to, but you noticed a gap so you filled it, and they don't appreciate it. And they're not rude or mean about it. They just don't necessarily appreciate it because they didn't ask you to do it, and you're mad that you're not receiving appreciation when you never communicated that you want appreciation. It's like this cycle of overworking and overdoing it and overgiving and overgiving and overgiving. This is the Queen of Cups in reverse. Overgiving and overgiving and overdoing and overdoing. Taurus is such a like abundant place. It's such a verdant and beautiful place. And I think it's so easy in the Taurus parts of our charts to overemphasize like physical and material resources and like overemphasize sharing, honestly. But it can be overbearing when you're constantly giving to people. Like, some gifts are too big, and I think there's a mindfulness that needs to come up here. Yeah. That part of the growth is mindfulness. The part of the growth is healing through relational wounds, because a lot of us people who are hermity, it's not for no reason. Like, sometimes it's temperament, like that's often part of it. Like, it's just kind of the way we are. But like, often with people who have a hard time being in community, the problem is like past experiences that have like really hurt and harmed us. I'm bringing this up because we're looking at Chiron, and so there is like a wound present here. Like, whatever Taurus wounds that you have are coming to the fore. And I'm thinking about it relationally because we're looking at this axis between Leo and Aquarius and kind of moving toward being more relational and being in community and supporting each other and supporting like a positive collective vision where we all get to thrive collectively together. That I understand that it is hard for many people to be in community because maybe your family sucks. And I'm being trite here, but like, people are not going no contact with family for no reason. And it's not happening any more often than it has in the past. Now we're just talking about it more now because we have the internet. That, many of us have wounds around these things, and we get this opportunity in interacting with new people and showing up newly, showing up differently, being more open to give and receive, in particular, being more open to receive some help. Now, remember what I talked about earlier in the other reading about like, leaning on other people? That's what this 10 of Wands person has a really hard time with. A 10 of Wands person is going to do everything by themselves, and they're never going to tell anyone that they're struggling. They're the type of person who's running around helping everybody else and will never tell those people who would be happy to support them that they need support. They'll never tell them. Stop doing that shit. Stop sabotaging yourself by not leaning on people. Stop, expecting that people are just going to let you down without even giving them the opportunity to show up for you. My spirits are tired. They're tired of it. Your spirits are tired of the way that you toil for no reason. Spread that work out. There is work for you to do. Don't get it twisted, but spread some of that shit out. You don't have to do everything yourself. Okay. Last card. And I'm gonna pull a card from an oracle deck. I'm seeing what I even have over here. Let's do this one. I'm gonna pull a card from the Cat Oracle. Listen, I love a secondhand deck. A lot of the tarot decks I bought secondhand, and this is one of them. This is a more recent one. Final card. And this card is just like closing out the reading. I like to think of the last card that I pull as like a little friend, a supportive energy, something that wraps up everything that we've talked about today and like gives me just one little point to focus on, because I know I gave you a lot just now. I know I gave you a lot. So this just gives you like one specific thing to focus your energy and attention on. Sorry, y'all, I got distracted. I'm just making sure that I have the correct receiver plugged in for this particular microphone. I hope it's the right one. Yeah, it's the right one, because I think this is for a different one. I think. Well, I hope so. I hope this thing has sound. Anyway. That would be a nightmare if it didn't have any sound and I had to re-record this whole thing. If that happened, I guess this was just for me. Okay. Card I'm pulling today is the six-toed cat. That's really cute. I like this card. Six-toed cat, uniqueness, versatility, and balance. And isn't that a word wrapping up everything? It makes me think of the Two of Pentacles. It makes me think of Uranus and Gemini. It makes me think of the Seven of Pentacles and the Ten of Wands. It's connected to everything. The final note that we're walking away with is agility. Is flexibility, to continue to walk forward and allow yourself to be surprised by what you can do, by what you can accommodate, and let yourself be surprised by your circumstances. Jadedness is very 2000 and late. Okay. We're not doing that anymore. We're not jaded anymore. We're not going into new interactions with outdated and past expectations. We're rewriting the script. We're throwing out the script entirely. Okay. Like flexibility, change, newness. We're turning over a new leaf here. This is how you assemble your dream team. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that this reading supported you. Comment down below if any of it resonated. claim the message down below in the comments if, you know, you're ready to assemble your dream team, you're ready to get out there and be with people. And let me know if you're excited about this knitting pattern that I'm putting together, what kind of information you might be interested in seeing in something like that. Let me know what you want to learn about astrology, if you want to learn anything about astrology or about reading tarot. The workbook that I'm working on for astrology is kind of just an introduction to some concepts in traditional astrology that I think are really good foundations, but I'm doing it in a kind of arts and crafts way that emphasizes like coloring stuff to learn. So yeah, I don't know. What do you want to learn? All right. Thanks so much for being here. And until next time, take care.